Welcoming you to a life of awareness, the Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kerzner.
Hello and welcome to episode 65 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kerzner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you wholeheartedly, sincerely, and deeply for joining me in this very unique present moment. The title and topic of today's podcast is Enduring Adversity with Presence. And I wanted to touch upon this topic specifically because I know there are a lot of people out there that are going through some very challenging present moments. And I felt like this would be an opportune time to explain how being present can help alleviate some of the suffering, especially some of the self-inflicted suffering that we experience while we're having adversity, while we're experiencing adversity, while we're living through adversity. You know, this day and age, especially right now, there's a lot of different things unfolding in the world, all over the place, as well as right in front of our faces. Whether it's the economy, the issues over in Russia, whatever it is, anything that's presented on mainstream media, there's a lot of challenges that a lot of people are enduring at this present moment, but for lengthy periods of time. And it's really important that when we get into these challenging situations, that we're able to see these things with clarity. But that's very difficult at the same time, and that's where we talk about enduring. We want to endure adversity. But while we're enduring adversity, we need to be very cognizant of the stories that our mind or our egos start to throw up and present, which creates more conflict internally and more of a struggle, and certainly enters us into a state of resistance, which basically takes us out of the present moment. And once we're out of the present moment, then our egos have a field day with us, where they can shoot us into the past or to the future, where we can use our imaginations to create terrible things that might be coming up, or we can peer back into the past through a very faulty lens. The ego loves these moments. And so as we're going through challenging times or enduring adversity, the ego is right there on the periphery, just waiting to kind of dig in. So what do we do about this? What does this look like? How do we employ tools that could help us absolve some of the suffering that takes place? You're not going to be able to absolve all of the suffering that takes place when you're enduring adversity, because some of the suffering is actually purposeful, meaning that the suffering that you're experiencing, there's value to it. There's insight that can be gleaned. There's lessons to be learned. But that can only take place if you zoom out, if you're not allowing your ego to make stories for you. And what do I mean by this? I mean that as you're enduring the adversity or the challenges, whatever's showing up for you, the ego is watching this happen. And as the ego is watching this happen, it's crafting different methodologies, different tools, different stories to make the suffering even more intense. So you have these two different things going on. You have a sense of suffering that has a purpose, and there's suffering that's purposeless. And it's up to you as you're enduring these challenging moments, as you're enduring adversity, to be able to differentiate and discern between the two. And I'm not sitting here saying that that's necessarily easy, but I will say that this is a very valuable endeavor, because you can really go through a very tough, challenging time in your life, however long that takes, however many present moments it takes, without having to add an extra layer of self-inflicted suffering at the hands of your ego. But if you're not paying attention and you get sucked into the stories, your ego will do its best to keep you looped. So whatever experience you're having, however much suffering you're having, the ego will start chiming in and making you feel like the victim, or making you think about, why is this happening to me? Or how much longer is this going to happen? Why do I keep running into these things, these challenges? When is it ever going to end? Why is this? All these questions that get you triggered, that get your emotional body, your emotions, your nervous system triggered. And then you're just stuck in a loop. And it's really challenging to get out. So, whether you're enduring challenging moments now, or don't worry, challenging moments will show up. It's a very integral part of life. It's an integral part of the human condition. So understanding how to endure adversity while being present, will allow you to endure that adversity without creating extra suffering for yourself. And this is actually something that you can kind of reflect on, especially if you can reflect on it without being judgmental, which is actually a really important tool, because then you could peer back and see things more objectively. You could see how how adversity showed up and how you navigated it, but you could also see how adversity showed up and you might have gotten sucked into the stories that your ego was feeding you and fueling, causing more suffering, which was needless. Presence is really the key here. And as you're going through these challenging times, as you're enduring the adversity that's being given to you through life or the universe, it's important to ask yourself, like, am I being present? Am I staying in the moment? Where's my focus? Where's my mind? And that's really going to have to be something that you're going to want to do or try to do in a moment-by-moment basis. And again, this is not easy. It is not at all, because adversity and suffering, although it's an integral part of being a human being, it's extremely uncomfortable. And as humans, we desire comfort. We don't want to suffer, so we push against it. But because there's duality in this reality, suffering is going to happen regardless of how much you don't want it. You can't. It's unavoidable. The more you try to avoid it, the bigger a problem it's going to be when it shows up. So I'm not saying you have to necessarily embrace the adversity, but we talk about acceptance. So acceptance is the key, especially because you're not accepting it because you want it or you like it. You're showing acceptance to the adversity because you understand that the only way to stay in a flow state is to greet the adversity without resistance. Really, to greet it with neutrality, to say, okay, this is happening. What do I want to do about it now? There's nothing or no one that's going to be able to tell you how long the adversity, the challenging moments are going to last. And that's why there's such a danger for slipping out of the moment or allowing your ego to chime in and take control. Because your ego is going to make you start thinking these stories about, like, how long is this going to take? And just making time seem like it's lasting forever. And again, that just gets you looped in, because then you enter into a state of fight or flight, and then your body starts releasing cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Once that happens, cortisol releases inflammation systemically all throughout your body. The more inflammation you have circulating throughout your body, the more easily triggered your nervous system is going to be. And so again, you're stuck in this loop. And then you have to find your way out. Again, these are just opportunities in life, if you could see it as such. It's not a tragedy, but it depends on your perspective and your perception of what's actually happening for you. So if you can change your perception of what adversity is to something that could be a little bit more neutral, even calling it an opportunity, then you can see it and you can learn from it and you can grow from it. And that's going to be up to you, because it's so easy to start seeing those challenging moments as something that's really negative. And as soon as you enter into that mind state, the adversity becomes so much harder, so much more tragic, and then you get lost. Let me be clear here that this is a lifelong process. It's certainly not a one and done or something that you're going to figure out right away. And you'll get opportunity after opportunity to try to get it to do it a little bit differently and to get it right in that moment. Because you're not going to be able to compare one moment to the other. So getting it right in one moment doesn't necessarily mean you'll be able to get it right in the next, but you just got to keep trying. It's all about the effort, especially when it comes to enduring challenging moments or enduring adversity. Like, what are you doing to work through it? What is it trying to show you? What is it trying to teach you? What is it trying to shift you into a different state of being? These are all states of reflection. But if you're in a state of resistance, it's really difficult to have clear reflection and also just to have clarity in general. And because we all go through challenging moments, a topic like this is so integral. And I really wanted to do it in a very succinct way that it could be processed and used as a tool. Because, I've gone through many moments of great adversity, and I'm sure that there are quite a few lined up for me, but I don't have to worry about the future. I just have to greet each moment as it is. But as I'm personally experiencing the adversity, I'm also really watching my mind, and I'm watching my ego to make sure that there's no threads there that my ego's trying to grab onto. So I'm really analyzing all the thoughts that are flowing through me and challenging them as best I can. It's not easy because once your nervous system gets engaged and you enter into a state of tension, frustration, anger, resentment, whatever it is, it makes the adversity so much more difficult. It makes it last so much longer. And it just makes it it becomes such an issue. And then you start talking about it, you start complaining about it, you start commiserating about it, and then you're lost. So then at that point you have to work your way back to the present moment. And there's so many different tools to help you get there. Even asking yourself, am I being present? In those moments of adversities, it can shift you right back, or at least give you a good glimpse of where you're at and how much work you have to do to get back to where you need to be. And where you need to be is the present moment, all the time. But yet, we make our way away from it. We get distracted. We become numb. We stop using our tools. And none of this is wrong at all. There's no right and wrong. There just is. But, the reality of the situation is that adversity, under the right perception, can be seen as an opportunity. And I'll repeat that as many times as I need to so that you can shift the way you're seeing it, so that there's so many different things that you can learn from it. But at the same time, your job, your responsibility, all your efforts needs to be to watch the thoughts that are flowing through your head, every single one of them, to make sure that first of all, that they are only about the present moment, and second of all, that you're not allowing your ego to create all these stories that are just going to put you into a much deeper state, a much more tragic state of suffering, which is so unnecessary. That's the self-inflicted suffering that we've talked about time and time again. The self-inflicted suffering is always due to a lack of presence, and adversity is always going to challenge your presence. Let me say that again. Adversity is always going to challenge your presence. So when adversity shows up, that's when class begins. That's when all the tools have to come out of your toolbox. And yes, in the beginning, when the challenging times show up, it's very difficult to remember that you even have tools. But that's exactly when you have to snap out of it. And you might not be able to snap out of it in the beginning. That's okay too. It's really important that you're not hard on yourself, because that'll just create more self-inflicted suffering. But take a moment to think about what's going on in your life, what's challenging you, what it's bringing about in you, and where your ego's at. What's going on in your head? Do you need to meditate? Do you need to journal? Do you need to use any of your presence tools to make sense of it? You don't have to understand it completely, but when it comes to enduring adversity, full acceptance is the key. You can't pick and choose what part of the challenging moment you like and you don't like. You have to embrace the whole thing, because if you start picking and choosing, that's more suffering. You just can't do it, because that means you're going to accept part of it and you're going to resist and reject another part of it. That's not up to you. But again, your mind wants to allow you to think that you can do that. And that will just create more suffering and more stories. And I've talked about that and what that does to you. So I hope that whatever you're enduring in this moment, or whatever present moments are coming up for you or that you've experienced, that you're able to reflect on this topic specifically and understand that adversity is not necessarily a bad thing. It's an opportunity for growth. But when you're enduring these really challenging, hard times, please do your work so that your mind doesn't get the best of you, so it doesn't spin you out. And if you start to get spun out, then look in your toolbox. Run through all your tools. See what's working in that moment. Just keep trying. That's all. Because it's all about the effort. And it always was all about the effort. It's not always about the results. Especially when it comes to working on yourself. And especially when it comes to being present. So please, think about what I just spoke to you about. Think about this topic. Understand the value. Especially understand that resistance, when it comes to suffering, will only create more suffering. Yeah, you don't have to like it. I'm not asking you to like it. I'm just asking you to be present so you can have clarity to understand why these things are happening for you and what you can do about it. With that being said, I thank you so much for joining me. sharing this present moment with me. And I wish you only peace, joy, love, and happiness.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.